name is Nidhi Gupta. I most recently was the Chief Product Officer at Hired. I've been in the tech industry for a long time, done lots of different roles. I've been in engineering management roles for over 20 years at various levels. I've run engineers, designers, product, BD, every function you can think of. When I grew up as an engineering manager, as most speakers today, we sort of learned from the school of hard knocks, right? There wasn't a Calibrate, there wasn't a Plato. So what I'm here to talk to you about today is some of the lessons I learned from my experiences and from those around me. And I want to share those with you in a story form. The characters in the story are fictional, but the stories are real. The names are made up, but the people are real. These things actually happen. So let's get started. So the story begins when I had joined this new company, a 15-person startup, 5-person engineering team, and I was brought in to lead and grow the engineering team. As is typically true for me, when I join a new organization or an engineer is new into my organization, I try to get to know them, to connect with them, as Kwasi mentioned earlier. So my first week there, I set the stage, I tell the team that I'm going to try to get to know you better. And one of those engineers on my team, his name was Jared. My preferred mechanism of getting to know somebody is actually out of the office because I like to get away from formality of the office. I feel like it's more open when you're out in the open, walking, or just away from the office. The second reason why I like to be away from the office is I like walking, and doing these walk and talks on my one-on-ones actually helps me get to my 10,000 steps. So I reach out to Jared, and I say, hey, do you like walking? Lucky for me, he does. So we go on our first walk and talk. So like a good manager, I first set the stage by telling him what this was going to be about. It was not going to be about work. It was going to be about us getting to know each other. Then I set an example by walking him through my background, through my various pit stops, through my work history, and why I made those decisions and why I was at this company. I'm sort of like giving myself a pat on the back, thinking, well done. I've sort of set the stage for him to emulate me. So then, having done that, I look at him and I'm like, hey, Jared, so what about you? Tell me about you. And Jared looks at me and he says, not much. I'm a front-end engineer here. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. Like, shit, what do I do? All right. So then, okay, what about that company? I saw on your LinkedIn profile, you were at company ABC prior to this. What did you do there? Front-end engineer. Okay, he's gonna be a hard nut to crack. So, tried lots of different questions, prodded, couldn't get anywhere. Get back to the office. Happens sometimes, right? As we heard today, most of us are introverts, 98.7% of us are introverts. So I'm like, all right, let's figure out strategies. So on my drive home that day, I'm trying to come up with alternate strategies of how I'm going to try to get to know Jared better. In our next walk and talk, I start the conversation by saying, hey, I like gardening and I like pottery. What about you? I just code. Oh, sometimes I play video games. Haha, there was something. He plays video games. But, sucks for me, I know nothing about video games. What do I do now? But I'm like, okay, there is an opening. Let me walk through this door, see how far I can take it. So what kind of video games? Which ones do you like? Which ones do you not like? What do you think of Zynga? What do you think of the culture at Zynga? What do you think of EA? And through the course of that interrogation, I at least learn something about him. I learn what he likes, what kinds of engineering cultures he likes, what kinds of companies he likes. So I'm kind of happy. I'm feeling good about this one. So many such conversations later, many such coffees later, I basically come up with a varying degrees of different strategies, and I keep them in my back pocket. So whenever I hit a wall, I can then try an alternate strategy to get to know him better. Why am I doing all this? Because I really, truly want to try to understand him. I truly want to understand what motivates him, what drives him, what he's passionate about, why he's here at this company, and what he wants to accomplish at this pit stop that he's had. While we're going through this process, we have a hackathon. Super exciting. Hackathons are like the best days in the office for me. So usually during hackathons, I don't take on a project of my own. I just walk around the engineering pod. I try to help engineers develop their ideas, brainstorm with them, whatnot. So I'm walking around the engineering pod, and I come upon Jared's desk. And I'm like, hey, do you want to talk about your project? No. I can help you. I'm good. Like, okay, he's being cagey, but fine. Doesn't matter. Happens. The day goes swimmingly. It's an exciting day. Hackathon ends, and comes time for judging. I get selected as one of the judges. I don't like to be a judge, but fine, I'll do it. New to the company and all. Now I'm a judge, and as luck would have it, Jared is up there presenting. I'm sitting in the audience, I'm also a judge, and somebody behind me whispers something to me. Very brief conversation ensues, very innocuous, nothing happens. Jared continues to present, and nothing, really. So the judging ends, winners are announced, we celebrate everybody's effort, we celebrate all of the projects. Jared doesn't win. We go out for drinks to celebrate, and Jared is in a really sullen mood. I'm thinking, sore loser. I try not to reach out to him. Like, I don't have the time for this, such a great day. I just celebrate with the rest of the team, and the day's over. Over the next couple of days, his attitude doesn't get any better. His demeanor doesn't get any better. And I notice that he has that demeanor just with me, not with anybody else at the office. So I'm completely baffled. I must have done something, I just don't know what. So I again request him for a walk and talk. Lucky for me, he agrees, so we go on another walk and talk. And again, it's monosyllables, cryptic, and I'm thinking, oh my God, we've taken 20 steps back. What happened here? So a lot of conversation later, a lot of walking later, it turns out that, you know that little whispering thing that I had when he was presenting? He thought that in that conversation, he overheard me putting down his hack project. And I'm like, dude, that just didn't happen. It didn't happen. And he looks at me, he's like, of course it did, I heard it. And I'm like, Jared, I don't lie. I'm just denying, I'm becoming defensive, and I'm just denying because it just didn't happen. Then he goes on to say that, you know why I didn't share my project idea with you? I'm like, why? He's like, I didn't trust that you could keep it to yourself. Oh, that hurt. I looked at him and I'm like, you trust me, don't you? And he didn't even have to answer that. The answer was staring me in the face. He didn't. So while I had worked really hard in establishing a relationship with him, that relationship was just a connection. It was not a relationship of mutual trust and respect. Okay, happens, because with some people, trust is given. With others, trust is earned. And in his case, I clearly had to earn his trust, and I just hadn't been long enough at the company to earn his trust yet. So in a way, it was really painful, but at least we had a problem statement. So the little miss problem solver in me was very happy that at least I had a problem to solve, right? So On this walk and talk, we try to come up with strategies on how we can go about establishing that relationship of trust. First step towards that is communication. So we come up with a plan together, which was great. We come up with a plan where we say, now from this day onwards, we are actually not going to have any digital communication. No Slack, no email, no text. I'm his manager. How do we communicate? We got shit to deliver. So the way we do that is through walks and talks. So we schedule twice a week walks and talks, and during which we're going to talk about what we liked about each other over the last few days, what rubbed us the wrong way, and like offer clarifications as needed, and of course any tactical stuff we had to talk about from a project delivery standpoint. And since there are realities of business, if we needed more time, we would just talk to each other to schedule additional time. First few of these, extremely, excruciatingly painful. He was imagining things that didn't exist. He was volleying all sorts of allegations, but he was hurting. I get it. And it was really hard not to get defensive. It was really hard not to justify, like, dude, no, you're wrong. I had to really keep a calm demeanor, force myself to keep my eye on the prize, which was repairing this relationship, as I knew in my heart that I could repair this relationship. And I'm happy to say, 3 weeks later, 6 of these walks and talks later, he comes up to me and he says, Nidhi, I think we're good. We don't need these anymore. Yes! So moral of the story, connect, right? Connect with your engineer. Before you think about managing your engineers, connect with them at a human level. But just that connection is not enough. In addition to that connection, you need to have that relationship of trust and respect. So let me pause here for a second and talk about my management philosophy. So as you know, the engineering management is such a crazy multidimensional role. At any given point in time, you're wearing 20 different hats, you're juggling 20 different things. Sometimes it's just hard to remember. Like if you become a project manager for a long time, for like 2 months, and you're just focusing on projects, you forget to focus on strategy. And I used to do that all the time. So to remind myself and to aid myself in remembering what a highly multidimensional role mine was, I had to come up with this philosophy of 5 Ps. So these are 5 Ps, I'll walk you through those today. And these are the Ps that I remember that I use as a rubric for myself in terms of onboarding, offboarding, in terms of onboarding, in terms of training my engineering manager, for all sorts of things. So the story brings me to my first P, which is people. When you get trained to become an engineering manager, you learn about how to do effective one-on-ones. Quasi gave an amazing talk about effective one-on-ones and his 3 A's strategy. You learn about onboarding people, offboarding people, performance management, PIPs, all of that stuff. The thing I learned from the School of Hard Knocks, in addition to all of that, is keep your pulse on the organization. Once you have that human connection, once you have that relationship of trust and respect, you actually will be able to read your engineer's body language and figure out what their stress level is. And that truly is keeping a pulse on the organization as opposed to managing the organization via status reports. All right, so going back to my story. So we're growing. We've grown from a 5-person organization, 5-person engineering organization, to a 15-person organization. So now is the time to start thinking about processes and org design and what have you. So from an org design standpoint, it's kind of clear. I think we have 3 natural teams based on expertise in functional areas, which is growth, data, and applications. So I talked to my leads. I proposed these 3. They agree. Totally makes sense. Completely non-controversial. Then we talk about process. I'm thinking everybody does Agile today. Like this is going to be a breeze. Haha. Was I wrong? Not so much. My growth person didn't want any process whatsoever because he wanted to be super agile. The applications person wanted rigidity. He wanted all the sprint rituals. He wanted a bi-weekly sprint, a 2-week sprint, fortnightly. I always get confused with that. And my data person just wanted Kanban. He's like, you know, there's so many interrupts we get. I can't do a 2-week sprint. I don't like Agile anyway. I was like, okay, all right, take a deep breath. I've done Agile before. In my previous job, we successfully did it across all of these 3 teams. There was no issue. Makes my life so much simpler because there is so much cross-functional communication I have to do. I can, if everybody has the same cadence, I can communicate this. We can schedule company-wide demos. It's easier to communicate to the executive team, send company-wide emails, da, 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 da. This is what we want to do. I dug my heels. The conversation didn't go anywhere because they dug their heels too. It got to the point where at the end of that conversation, my growth lead looks at me and he says, Nidhi, you just don't understand what we do. I was livid. I was fuming. I licked my wounds, went back in my car, driving back home, and I'm thinking, you know what? I need to vent. As Ali said, own your emotions. I had to like do my feeling processing thing. So I called a fellow VP Ange that I know, and I was hoping she would she'd let me vent, she'd hear me out. So I call her and I start venting. She's not in my corner. I'm like, what? Dude, aren't you listening to me? My life becomes so much simpler. What is the problem with Agile? Through all my venting, finally she made me realize that I was wrong. And the reason I was wrong is because I was bringing a process and trying to force fit that into the organization. But just like people are unique, every organization is unique. Every team is unique. And if you do not customize the process and make it work for the organization, you're not going to be successful. So that brings me to my next P, which is process. What you learn is you have to be the harbinger of process. You have to be the stewards of processes within your company. But remember, your company now is different from your company before, and your company tomorrow is going to be different from the company from today. So you always want to continually look at your processes, evolve them, and customize them to the needs of your organization. All right, so did I not do that? Okay. Now let's get back to Jared. So we're 6 months in. Jared's doing great. We have a great working relationship. And Jared has always been my top engineer. He's always been great in terms of his deliveries and deadlines and communication and everything. And all of a sudden I start to notice that Jared is now missing deadlines. So the stories will sound very similar to the one Quasi said, Quasi related earlier. He starts to miss deadlines. When I reach out to him, he replies back 48 hours later, which is so unlike him. He also has bugs in his code. And these bugs are actually making their way into production, which is really bad. So the combination of these missed deadlines and bugs is actually now has exec level visibility in my tiny startup. So I'm really sweating it. Right? As an engineering manager, you are responsible for delivery. It's your responsibility to make sure stuff makes it into production and it's good quality, good high quality. The other thing I notice is he's no longer making eye contact with me. So simple things like, hey Jared, good morning Jared, essentially are like, he's just mumbling. So, okay, we go for a walk and talk. And I'm anxious. I'm really anxious because we're not hitting our dates. So I put my project manager hat on and we're walking. And I first talked to him about his missed deadlines. Then I talked to him about the fact that he's not responding to me in a timely manner. Then I talk about bugs. And as the conversation goes on and on and on, he's getting even more anxious because I'm passing my anxiousness over to him. The guy was stressed to begin with, and he's even more stressed. He always had a strong sense of ownership, so obviously he's feeling very bad because I'm making him feel really shitty. And it gets to the point where he just quits. He quits right then and there, on the spot, as we're walking. And the earth just moved. Like, so, then I walk in silence for a whole 1 minute. And during that 1 minute, my brain is like rapidly processing information. And I realized something. I realized that I was wearing my project manager hat on. I should take that off and put my engineering manager hat back on, because the engineering manager hat on allows me to be his guide, coach, and mentor. And the thing that was bugging me the most was lack of eye contact. I don't even know why. I don't even know why that is. And I haven't even broached that topic with him because I'm so obsessed about the dates. So I decide to just be straight with him. And I'm like, hey, Jared, we worked together for 6 months. I know you well enough at this point. What's going on? There seems to be something going on, because the version of you I see in the office is not the version I've seen over the last 6 months. If you'd share with me as a friend, maybe I can help you. Maybe together we can come up with strategies to figure out how you can get to a better place. Just that authentic conversation, the dam broke. And he went on to share with me, there was a lot of stuff going on with his personal life. He was in a terrible relationship. He had gotten into some debt, It was a great conversation. And in that conversation, after he shared that with me, we were actually able to problem solve together. Not his personal life, but we were able to problem solve as how I could help him reduce stress from a work standpoint. So the lesson learned here is, yes, you are an engineering manager who is also responsible for delivery. You are also a part-time and project manager, but you are always an EM first. So remember that. So a year goes by. Now Jared's doing really well at the company. I promoted him to be an engineering manager. He's 30 days in as an engineering manager, so I do a quick 360-degree feedback survey from the team to figure out how he's doing. The feedback's mixed. I've expected that. But one of the remarkable things in his feedback is that I feel like the team doesn't have any sense of ownership. Sounds familiar, right? As I dig in, nothing surprising. Essentially, this scenario repeats itself. Jared walks into a meeting, they're discussing something, Jared knows the answer, the team doesn't know the answer because he basically built this code base, and Jared would walk in, he would get on the whiteboard, clear, go do this. So of course the team has become order takers. All of us have gone through this. I did this like all the time when I first became an engineering manager. So no wonder they don't have a sense of ownership. Okay, I can solve for this. One of the senior engineers actually gives really great feedback. So he says, Nidhi, we seem to be refactoring a lot. We are about to put something into production, and then we learn something else that the other team is doing, so we have to go refactor and redo it. And then a week later, the same scenario repeats itself. Where's our strategy? Where's the company going? Where's the product going? Jared's trying to do this because obviously he's a new engineering manager. He's trying to prove his technical worth. He's trying to figure out how he can technically participate. But there's another way. Jared is in a unique position where he has a bird's eye view of the entire company, the entire product, all of the teams. That's the value he can bring to his team so that they can be better connected with the business and with the strategy. So that's how we solve for that. That brings me to platform. You are no longer the best technical mind on your team. You should not be. If you are, that's a mistake. But you can still prove your technical worth by guiding the technical product in the right direction, by bringing that big picture. Okay? All right, so maybe you figured out by now, I'm a fairly opinionated person. I have opinions about everything. But in this case, I'm specifically talking about the product. right? So I've never been an order taker. Some of the PMs have found it very hard to work with me because I just want to know. I just want to know why we're building what we're building. And that's sort of the mindset that I've inculcated in my organizations. I want my engineers to be product opinionated. So usually, if I understand why we're building something, and if I've heard it directly from a customer or from a sales call or from user feedback, then I'm totally behind it. So I've always encouraged, and even this organization that I've built, I've encouraged all of them to participate very actively in all of these conversations. So my PM counterpart comes to me, we're doing our roadmap planning for the next quarter, and he says, Nidhi, you know I have a long list of 20 things. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So I pretty much know I can maybe fit like 5. We're a small team. But instead of being that wall of no, the way I pursue this conversation is, so it's a long list, but based on the strategy conversation we've just had, I think the top 5 are the most important. Do you agree? And he says, yeah, I agree with that. I'm like, great. Let's slot these in first and then see what we're left with, right? So most of these are like very large t-shirt sizing. As I'm slotting those in, Jared and one of the engineers, they walk into the room. And Jared looks at the list, and for the next few, he actually comes up with a really brilliant idea because he's heard this and seen this with the customers. And he's like, you know what? This is really what the customers were asking for. And if we take this shortcut, we can change this t-shirt size from extra large to a medium or a small. So great idea, great collaboration. We're able to fit those in. And the engineer has recently been in a customer call, and that engineer actually points out a feature that's not even listed in these 20. And she comes up with a brilliant idea, which actually opens up a brand new market segment for us if we were to just do this one MVP. So by the end of this conversation, we've actually, where I thought we were only going to be able to fit 5 of this list of 20, we're actually able to fit about 15 and then some. That's the value of your team and you being product opinionated. So when it comes to product, my advice to you is be product opinionated. Go beyond technology and roadmap and projects and focus on the product that you and your teams are building, because that's how you can make a greater impact to the business and to the company at large. So ladies and gentlemen, these are my 5 Ps. Thank you.